Good evening, everybody. This is the first time I've ever been asked to address a meeting where right in front of me on the table was a note that said, "Wrap up, please." So I can take a hint, and I just want to tell you how much I've enjoyed being here with you this evening. So I'm not going to watch the time, but if you can tell me when I'm done, please. You can reuse the same piece of paper. So I'm very happy to be at a gathering of Marxists, and one of the things that we're in short supply of in the movement today is Marxist cadre, and I salute anybody who's involved in the recruitment and training of Marxist cadre, because you know, my generation is getting older. We're still in the game, but we came out of a left that really gave us a lot for all of its shortcomings. And whenever I walked by the U.S. consulate sometime during the Vietnam War, and there was this line of old Communist Party Ukrainian dudes with their trench coats. They were getting kind of old, and I walked by with some of my buddies, and one of them said, "It is good to see young people." It took me about 50 years to figure out what they were talking about. I get it now, you know. It's good to see young people. So I'm just going to start off by saying I think one of the things that we all know is how important it is to fight for history. It is so important to fight for history. To fight for what really happened, an accurate account of what really happened. And in a lot of ways, that's a foundation upon which we move forward. And I would submit to you that the history of the provincial election that just happened is already being rewritten. I think it's already being rewritten, and it disturbs me greatly, and I wasn't here for the midday session, and I apologize for that. We just had a close call with something almost beyond comprehension. And I spent the last 18 months of my life out there feeling sometimes like a bit of a crank, ringing the bell, saying Ontario could be a right-to-work jurisdiction within a matter of months or weeks. They want to destroy us. They want to set our movement back for decades. They want to drive our wages down. They want us to have no power. They want to destroy our unions. They want to snuff out any kind of progressive voice. They want to beat back all the gains we've made on equity. They want to go for the max. We just squeaked through that. We just squeaked through that. And I would say to you that the people who don't get that, who don't get the significance of the victory of defeating Hudak, never came to terms with the threat. Because if you really came to terms with the threat, and what could have so easily happened to us, we would not be spending our time right now preoccupied with the casualties and the fallout. Because there were casualties, and there is fallout. But I say to you that the defeat of Tea Party North, of the right-to-work agenda, is of historic importance for Ontario, for all of Canada, and the United States. Profoundly important. Because if Hudak had won, and thank God he screwed up, because I'll admit to you that it wasn't just through our efforts that he went down in flames. He screwed up. He could have easily won. We just had a very close call. And our movement was in no way ready. Our movement was on cruise control. And even after Hudak wrote it down on paper and handed it out all over the bloody province. Like, what were we going to say? This was a surprise attack. Well, he told us exactly what he planned to do. The labor movement had 95% of its resources devoted to day-to-day routine functions, or 99%, all the way through this whole campaign. Of staff reps in Ontario, 800 or 900, maybe 50 were working on this campaign full-time. Maybe 30. Astonishing. That's the bad news. Now the good news is there were unions that did a great job of it. There were unions that did a terrible job of it, but the locals did a good job of it. But we should all be dancing for joy today because we could have entered into a whole nother period of history. A whole nother period of history. And never mind the mobilizations to fight against Hudak after he got elected. They've told us in the States, from the States, don't wait for that, because you'll lose. If these guys come into power, they're just going to do it. So what did we learn from this campaign? What's the good news from this campaign? Traveling across the province, delivering a very, very hard message. And I can tell you, I went online and I was doing research on denial. There's a whole, body of writing about denial. It's apparently deep in the human psyche, just like fight or flight. Apparently, denial's in there really deep. There's theories written about it. Apparently, that's why we can't come to terms with the ecological crisis. Because, it's all about us coming to terms with our mortality and all that stuff. I don't quite understand it, but I can tell you it's a powerful phenomenon, at least in the province of Ontario. I don't know about the rest of the world. In the province of Ontario, it's a powerful phenomenon.
Yes.
And people got it. So we came up with a plan. And I can tell you that the Labour Council in Toronto fought this thing the best we could, and it was discouraging, but we had meetings of hundreds of people to try and get people to go and talk to their members. Then we took it to the OFL, the Ontario Federation of Labour, and we were able to get a resolution passed, and we put forward a plan to take this campaign out on the road to ring the bell. And I came out of it very encouraged. For all that I saw, what I saw scared me, because in every community there's a left. In every community, there are new leaders emerging. And at one meeting I said, I hear all the time there's no young people around. I told my joke about the old Ukrainians and everything. I said, I keep hearing there's no young people around. I look around the room, and I see people in their 30s and in their 40s. That's what young people look like. That is what young people look like. Labor leaders, emerging labor leaders aren't 17 and a half. They're in their 30s and 40s. That's how old they're supposed to be. It takes you a while to get there. Yeah. Hey, glory, hallelujah. So there's all kinds of people, young people out there in their 30s and 40s who've got a decade or two of experience behind them and are going to be around for another 25, 30 years anyways in the struggle. Lots of them out there. That's good news. There's a willingness to fight. And I don't think there's a shortage of people who get it. I don't think there's a shortage of people who understand that austerity is a bad thing. Let's take a look at what happened in the provincial election. We may not like the results, but what was in the hearts and what was in the minds of the people who went out and voted for Liberals and New Democrats? For the most part, those people had in their hearts, we don't want a vicious society. We want a society where people take care of each other. What was in their minds? We don't want right to work. We don't want to fire 100,000 people, public servants. We value public services. So I don't think our biggest problem is that people don't have good values. I'd say 30% of the population gets it pretty thoroughly, 30 or 40% of the population. Our challenge is to come up with a program and a plan and figure out how to implement it. We need to organize the converted. I'm not saying we stop doing political work and explaining things to people and listening, of course, to them while we explain. But we get that training, how to look like you're listening while you're talking. So I don't feel that nobody gets it and we're this voice in the wilderness or anything. I don't think that's involved. I don't think that's our problem at all. So, I'm probably done time-wise. I would say to you that the way forward right now, first of all, we've got to fight for the history of what's just happened. We just won a big one. And there's going to be a lot of knives out and a lot of finger pointing, and don't let people get away with I think, a false description of what just took place, because that was a huge victory for the working class and the labor movement. And we won't be able to move forward in a strong way unless we defend that very, very recent history. And there are winds of change in the movement. We've seen that at the CLC. Labor leaders have rediscovered the membership. Astonishing. Well, glory, hallelujah, there's a working class out there. Well, you know, the left in Toronto, I went to U of T for about 6 weeks, and in 1960 something, so that explains it all. What was I going to say again? Oh yeah, there's a working class, yeah. So, I wasn't thinking that, by the way. There was a working class, so the left, at the time, the left didn't know there was a working class. And I remember a person who influenced me a lot said, you know, there's a working class right here on campus. You see the caretaker just went by? This is the working class right there. I thought, oh my God, I had no idea. And anyways, they're all around us, all over, and everything else. We don't have to. And so, I mean, there were people with theories of youth as class, and remember John and Mickey Roundtree, Carolyn, you know? So, there is a working class out there. The left has room to move. We're not. It's not like the 50s or 60s where or even 70s get beat up in the parking lot or something like that after a union meeting. It's a little scary sometimes, but not too bad. So I'm feeling quite optimistic. The labor leadership, as I say, now it's in vogue to talk with your members. It's kind of a trendy thing. However, the question of the day is whether or not there's going to be struggle. That's the question of the day. Will there be struggle? And I would say to you, our challenge in terms of the labor movement is union renewal. And union renewal is not possible without struggle. There's all kinds of theories about how to build powerful unions without struggle, and it's just crapola. Our other challenge, I would say, is that until we have an organized left, and it didn't come easy. Quebec Solidaire. That's an organization that comes out of struggle, and we have to keep on struggling and keep on studying and keep on applying Marxism to our daily political practice. And we have. I'll end on this note. That the good news is there's room for us in the labor movement. The bad news is that there's so much room for us in the labor movement that we can forget these other important part of our responsible task, which is to build a left party, a Marxist party, build a left organization. And we can have so much fun in that, union sandbox that we forget that that's not all we are. We're not supposed to be just left trade unions. We're people who are committed to building a better world. So thank you very much.